Chapter 1, Early Life. Malgus was born with the name Veridon in 3700 BBY on Dromund Kaas, the heart of the reconstituted Sith Empire. Sith Emperor Vitiate had rebuilt the Sith on this planet that was steeped in the dark side after the Sith seemingly perished after their loss during the Old Sith Wars. For hundreds of years, Vitiate had slowly rebuilt the Sith Order and was preparing for his conquest against the Republic. Veridon's parents gave him up for adoption right after birth, and he was raised by an adoptive father. His father worked as a biologist in the Imperial Science Bureau and managed a small zoo, where he kept and studied a wide array of exotic animals. From a young age, Veridon often spent time in the zoo of his father, caring for the animals and maintaining their cages. At the same time, as with most kids on Dromund Kaas, Veridon began training in the Force under various instructors. There, it quickly came out that he was incredibly gifted and had extraordinary potential in the Force. Hearing the praises from his teachers about his potential and the paths he could achieve in the Empire, the young Veridon shifted his mind towards this goal, joining the Empire as a Sith warrior. One day, while working in the zoo, one of their Twi'lek servants made a minor mistake. Veridon confronted her and killed her in cold blood, despite knowing fully well that the mistake was minor. He wanted to test for himself whether or not he had the willingness to kill someone in cold blood, a feat that was very necessary should he want to fulfill the potential that he had been promised. When his father learned of what Veridon had done, he was proud of his son. On Dromund Kaas, these types of feats were considered common. The strong shall rule over the weak, as was tradition in a Sith-led society. His father then reported the act to the Sith Academy on Dromund Kaas, deeming him ready to begin his proper training as a Sith warrior. On the last night before Veridon left for the Academy, his father took him for one last stroll through the zoo. There, he told Veridon that he truly enjoyed the animals because there was so much he could learn from them. As a first lesson, he led Veridon to the tank of a Kohun, an Anthrotop-type species. He then took a feeder rat and threw it into the tank. The Kohun immediately attacked it and killed the rat. Turning to Veridon, his father asked him why the Kohun would kill the rat despite just having been fed before and not being hungry. Veridon answered it was instinct. His father looked gleeful. Indeed, it was instinct. Animals were savages, and although savagery was useful, it could lead to someone becoming sloppy. Men, though, aren't savages. They control their bloodlust and only put it to use in order to achieve a greater goal. With this lesson in mind, they ventured to another exhibit. It was that of a Virson, an avian that Veridon found particularly boring. The bird was feeding its offspring while they watched. Suddenly, though, the offspring jumped up and killed the Virson mother. It turned out that the offspring the mother was feeding wasn't an offspring of hers, but rather a Mimnil, a creature that looked very similar to an offspring of the Virson. His father then told Veridon to trust no one, especially those who appear weak. That was the lesson of the Virson bird. His father then led him to a cage with a tarp over it, which Veridon hadn't seen before. His father told him to remove the tarp, and Veridon did as told. The cage was empty. There was nothing there. Confused, he turned to his father, who just said that this was his final lesson. Veridon then realized what it meant. He had hoped there was something there beneath the cage, but had been deceived. It was just an empty cage. Hope and deception. That was the final lesson his father wanted to part him with. Heeding these lessons, Veridon departed for the Sith Academy the next morning. There he quickly advanced in his training, becoming a Sith prodigy and powerful warrior. Eventually, the Sith pureblood Darth Vindican took him on as an apprentice. After being selected for that, Veridon dropped his birth name and took on his new identity as Malgus, a name he felt was more worthy of the Sith. On one of his missions to Geonosis, he discovered a Twi'lek slave girl who had been heavily mistreated by her owner, having bruises and wounds all over her body. Feeling bad for her, he killed her master and took her as his personal servant. The Twi'lek's name was Elena Daru. Although Malgus saw her as his slave, he eventually started to grow very fond of her, and they even became lovers. She gave Malgus a different part of life that he hadn't experienced up until that point. Still, he was a Sith warrior first and foremost, and couldn't let anyone know about his relationship with his servant. Alongside his master, he prepared the Sith's final steps toward the invasion of the Republic. For 1,000 years, the Sith were thought to be extinct, but soon they were to show themselves again. The day of their return was right upon them. Chapter 2: Recapture of Korriban. In 3681 BBY, the Sith Empire was ready. Vitiate had been delayed for centuries by the efforts of the Jedi Master Revan, but still nothing could stop their eventual return to the known galaxy. Darth Vindican and Malgus were tasked with the honor to be among the first strike team with the target to recapture Korriban, the ancient homeworld of the Sith in the Outer Rim. The Sith fleet emerged from hyperspace and immediately engaged the Republic space station that was meant to guard the area. The Sith quickly overwhelmed the fleet protecting the station, and Darth Vindican and Malgus boarded one of their Sith Fury-class interceptor to board the station. They wanted to make a statement and make sure none on the station survived. Upon landing in the hangar bay, the two Sith were immediately confronted by two Jedi, Master Cao Sin Dirac and his Padawan, Satele Shan. Without any hesitation, the Sith engaged the two Jedi. This was the moment that Malgus had been training towards for his entire life. He engaged the Jedi Padawan while his master dealt with the Zabrak Jedi Master. Malgus quickly overwhelmed Satele with his brute strength, feeling his strength increasing with every blow of his lightsaber. But then he was taken off balance when Dirac threw his lightsaber at him, allowing Satele to gain a footing and putting him on the defensive. As the battle raged, Malgus' master, Darth Vindican, launched a burst of Force lightning at Malgus' Jedi opponent. However, Jedi Master Cao Sin Dirac once again intervened, using the Force to strike Vindican and divert his attack. The Jedi Battle Master was a lot stronger than Malgus had expected. Vindican then turned his attention toward a nearby freighter belonging to a smuggler named Nico Okar. Okar was in the midst of trying to get the ship operational so that he and the Jedi could flee the battle. Meanwhile, a Republic trooper named Jace Malcolm defended the vessel, firing a rocket at Vindican to stall the Sith's assault. Vindican had no difficulty deflecting the rocket, but then heard Dirac tell his Padawan to escape. The thought that the Jedi would even attempt doing something as cowardly as trying to escape this fight enraged Malgus. Infuriated by the prospect of letting their enemies slip away, Malgus joined Vindican in launching a coordinated attack on Dirac. The Jedi Master, however, stood his ground and defended himself, wielding both his own lightsaber and Satele's saber staff. Even against both of them, Dirac proved to be more than a match. Every one of their attacks was parried and deflected back at them. As the fight went on, Dirac used the double-bladed lightsaber in a trick shot and stabbed Vindican through the chest, eliminating him from the fight. Malgus, who had been blasted away, looked at the scene before him in anger. His master had failed. Grabbing his master's lightsaber with the Force and completely in tune with his rage in the dark side, Malgus re-engaged the Jedi. As the Jedi hurled debris and fragments of metal at him using the Force, Malgus pushed forward relentlessly, swatting the wreckage aside. He disarmed Dirac by knocking Shan's saber staff from his grip and pressed the advantage, breaking through the Jedi's defenses. His power had proven too much, and the fight had gone on for too long for Dirac to keep putting up a fight. With a final stroke, Malgus sliced the tired Jedi across the chest, ending his life. He had won. Looking around, Malgus was surprised to see that Vindican was still alive. Instead of helping his former teacher, Malgus looked down on him with scorn. He ridiculed Vindican for his failure to stop the Jedi and the smuggler from escaping. Then, without hesitation, Malgus ended his master's life by decapitating him as the Sith fleet descended upon Korriban from orbit. His master had proven to be too weak to teach him anything else. Following the fight with the Jedi, Malgus descended to the surface of Korriban and wandered alone across the surface. During this solitary walk, he was struck by a Force vision, an image of the galaxy consumed by fire, the Republic and the Jedi Order in ruins. This vision cemented a conviction deep within him. He believed it was his destiny to bring about the destruction of the Republic and the downfall of the Jedi. Chapter 3: Battle of Alderaan. After the victory on Korriban, the Sith forces kept increasing their influence in the Outer Rim. The conflict had expanded itself across the entire galaxy and would be known as the Great Galactic War. Malgus himself was part of several battles. 14 years later, in 3667 BBY, Malgus was promoted to a Sith Lord and could now carry the name of a Darth. Forth on, he was to be known as Darth Malgus. Upon his promotion, he was picked to lead an assault on Alderaan, a peaceful Republic planet right along the core worlds. A victory on a core world planet would definitely leave the Republic weakened and send the message to the galaxy that the Republic couldn't protect them, making systems further fall in place and surrender to the Sith. Malgus launched the surprise attack at the same time as the Sith drew away the Republic fleet from the core worlds. Unlike most Sith of this era, Malgus was unconventional in his leadership style. He regularly employed alien mercenaries, individuals the Empire typically considered untrustworthy and treacherous. His willingness to work with non-humans made him an outlier, and his dealings with such diverse species enabled him to learn many alien languages. For the assault, he recruited the Mandalorian mercenary Shae Vizsla, whose skill he respected a lot, as she had done several jobs for him already, like assassinating a Republic senator. First, their fleet made an orbital bombardment to take out any anti-air turrets and defense systems. After that, Malgus landed thousands of Sith troops, war droids, and Sith warriors on the planet. Their objective was to capture the city and burn villages and such on the way to the ground to spread fear across the galaxy. On their way through a valley to get to the capital, they unexpectedly were ambushed by a Republic Special Forces squad led by Commander Jace Malcolm. Jace Malcolm was the same trooper that Malgus had encountered all these years ago when they first launched their attack on Korriban, who had escaped alongside the Jedi Padawan Satele Shan. Malcolm immediately started targeting Malgus, shooting his rocket launcher at him. Although Malgus managed to deflect these, he was forced to defect some into the ground, which scarred his face. However, to him, this was nothing. Pain only strengthens the dark side. He quickly subdued Malcolm and had 3 Sith prepare to execute him on the spot. But before the Sith warriors could act, Satele Shan, now a Jedi Knight, arrived and killed all 3 of them before engaging Malgus in a duel. She had grown a lot stronger since their last encounter, and Malgus was quickly forced on the back foot. But he quickly regained his footing and then started to counterattack. The scarring and the pain from his scarred face further fueling his attacks, making each strike feel like an attack from a beast. As their duel continued, Malgus managed to cut Satele's saber staff in half and prepared for the final blow. But it was caught by her just in time through her usage of Tutaminis. Malgus pressed on, knowing fully well that she couldn't hold it up forever. Just when she was about to be overwhelmed, Jace Malcolm tackled Malgus and set off a grenade that sent both of them flying apart. This opened Malgus up to an attack. Shan quickly reacted and blasted him with a powerful force push first, before sending a second one that brought down the entire hill to crash down on him. Malgus had just lost his first duel in his life. With Malgus defeated, the remaining Sith forces were dealt with by arriving Republic reinforcements. The surprise attack on Alderaan was an absolute defeat for the Sith. Malgus, however, despite being heavily wounded, having his lungs contracted, his skin burnt and barely able to breathe, was still alive. The Sith forces and Shae Vizsla evacuated him and brought him on board his shuttle to bring him back to friendly space. The defeat haunting the Sith Lord. Chapter 4. 3 Lessons for Life. As Malgus saw the cityscapes growing smaller as his shuttle flew toward open space, his mind was still burning for revenge. He couldn't stand the taste of defeat and couldn't believe that the Sith had lost Alderaan. As they were about to exit the planet's atmosphere, he sensed a lone Jedi in an Alderaanian city. Determined to get his revenge, he ordered the shuttle to turn around. Amongst the debris of the broken city, he saw a lone Zabrak Jedi searching his way through the rubble. Malgus leapt from his shuttle and landed in behind the Jedi, calling out to him. The Zabrak quickly recognized who he was and pulled out 2 blue-bladed lightsabers. Although Malgus was still quite heavily injured and had trouble breathing, he was dead set on defeating his foe. He then charged at the Jedi, ready to lock his blades with him, but to his surprise, the Jedi brought down 2 buildings with the Force in an attempt to crush him. The attack nearly worked, and Malgus was yet again buried underneath a pile of rubble, but he had used the Force just in time to prevent himself from being crushed entirely. In that moment, he remembered the first lesson that his father taught him all these years ago. He had greatly underestimated his opponent and savagely wanted to get his revenge, losing all control over his state of mind due to his bloodlust and revenge. That was an animal's action, but he had been taught to use his savagery nature in a controlled fashion. With that, he controlled his emotions and in a burst of power, blew the rebel away from himself. Standing upright again, he re-engaged the Jedi who was at a loss for words, determined to end him but heeding the lesson to not underestimate him anymore. His newfound determination and focused power quickly overwhelmed the Jedi. As Malgus kept pushing, he could feel his opponent growing more and more desperate. But then he realized something else. The Jedi seemed to be luring him somewhere as he was leaving more and more space. Then he sensed it. There was a second Jedi present, and the Zabrak was trying to appear weak so he'd keep his focus on him. His father's second lesson came to his mind. Trust no one, no matter how weak they appear in the moment. With that, he used the Force to grab the second Jedi out of hiding and crushed his neck with the Force. The Zabrak, enraged, threw everything he had at Malgus, but Malgus parried his attacks. Finally, he channeled his body with Force lightning and unleashed it on the Zabrak. With that, the Jedi fell to his knees, overwhelmed by the attack. As Malgus saw the Jedi kneeling there, with a look of desperation and sadness on his face, Malgus remembered his third lesson from his father. He deactivated his lightsaber and looked the Jedi in the eyes. He could see the Jedi's hopes going up, seeing him, thinking that perhaps there was mercy from a Sith? Malgus stepped forward and reignited his lightsaber right in the Jedi's chest. Hope and deception. Sometimes there was just an empty cage. That was the final lesson his father had given him all those years ago. Satisfied and having stilled his bloodlust, Malgus joined the retreating Sith forces. Back on board his ship, his wounds were tended to by Alina, who had accompanied him on most battles. It gave him solace to see her this invested in trying to tend to him, and she slowly nursed him back to health. Despite Alina's care, the wounds Satele had inflicted upon him were severe. Henceforth, he had to wear a respirator which covered his neck, nose, and mouth to help him breathe properly again. The Battle of Alderaan had left him scarred for life. Chapter 5. Setback. The Great Galactic War raged on, but neither side had a clear advantage up until this point. During the waning phases of the war, Darth Malgus spearheaded an aggressive campaign against the Republic Outer Rim worlds. As the battles started to amass themselves, Malgus decided to start documenting his actions in a personal journal. On the 129th day of the campaign, Malgus's forces launched an attack on the planet Ord Mantell. Accompanied by fellow Sith Lord Darth Malgus, Malgus led a direct assault on a Republic gun installation located at the foot of a cliff. They succeeded quite quickly and took control of the Republic stronghold. Over the following days, additional Sith troops arrived on Ord Mantell. Soon after, Malgus assembled his forces and delivered a speech to inspire them ahead of a major offensive targeting the capital of the planet. Malgus's army laid siege to the capital, aiming to break the city by starving its defenders and population. A week into the siege, Lord Adras, a political rival to Malgus, arrived on Ord Mantell. The Dark Council had dispatched him under the pretense of assisting Malgus. Infuriated by Adras's presence, Malgus begrudgingly tolerated his involvement. When Adras proposed using Mark I and Mark II Sith war droids to create a breach in the city's defenses, neither Malgus nor Venomol opposed the idea, though both had little faith in the droids' effectiveness. Acting on Adras's orders, the droids advanced on Livian Magnus's southern gate, only to be wiped out by the Republic's defenders. Although the assault failed, it did serve as a distraction. While the defenders were preoccupied fighting off the droids, Venomol and his commandos infiltrated the city and blew open a section of the wall. Malgus's forces flooded in and swiftly conquered the capital. Despite this success, Adras attempted to take full credit for the victory, despite his plan having failed. Malgus's disdain for him was at an all-time low at this point. Despite having captured the capital, the local population didn't fully comply to the Sith occupation. Furthermore, holding the planet became a bigger challenge for Malgus because for weeks they hadn't been resupplied. There was a danger that they'd soon be pushed off-world again should no reinforcements or supply run arrive. The problem was that the responsibility for military logistics lay with Minister Kamar of the Ministry of Logistics, but Malgus lacked the political leverage to pressure her into providing support. He also sent multiple requests to War Minister Sheris, which went unanswered. With no aid forthcoming, the Republic launched a counterattack, deploying a fleet of Hammerhead-class cruisers to strike at Malgus's orbiting ships. From the balcony of a palace in Livian Magnus, Malgus watched the Republic fleet engage his own. Realizing the situation was dire, he boarded his personal shuttle and ascended to the dreadnought to oversee the battle personally. But by the time he reached the bridge, the battle was already lost. Malgus could only watch as a crippled Harrower-class dreadnought descended uncontrollably into Ord Radama's atmosphere and crashed into the heart of the capital city. Through the Force, Malgus experienced the simultaneous deaths of Darth Venamal and over 100,000 civilians. Overcome with rage and grief, he unleashed a deafening Force scream. The power of his scream warped the Lindworm's Bridge viewport, ruptured the eardrums of his crew, and annihilated a formation of Republic Aurek-class strike fighters flying past the ship. Seeing no path to victory, Malgus ordered a full withdrawal from Ord Radama, commanding his remaining forces to retreat deep into the core of Sith-controlled space. Chapter 6. Redemption. Following their retreat, Malgus's forces were relentlessly pursued by the Republic. The Jedi commander Ven Zalo wanted to make sure that Malgus, who was responsible for all the death on Ord Radama, would be brought to justice. They followed him all the way to the Sith world of Ziost. Despite Malgus's best efforts, they were unable to stop the Republic from advancing. The Republic, confident in their advance, then launched an offensive against the planet Ashas Ree. Malgus was deployed to reinforce the defense and, upon arrival, took command of a line of siege tanks. Under his leadership, the Sith repelled multiple assaults by the Republic armored unit before finally emerging victorious. Despite the heavy toll, they stopped the Republic advance on Sith territory. In recognition of Malgus's instrumental role in the defense, the Dark Council assured him that he would never again face a supply crisis like the one he endured at Ord Radama. After his victory on Ashas Ree, Malgus was informed that the Jedi commander Ven Zalo had retreated to Sereno. As Ven Zalo was one of the highest-ranking and most powerful Jedi Masters of his time, Malgus wanted to kill him to firstly disrupt the Republic command structure, and secondly get revenge on the Jedi that had almost beat him at Ashas Ree. Malgus laid siege to Sereno and quickly captured the world. However, Ven Zalo managed to escape back to Coruscant. Despite that, his victories made rose his standing within the Sith Order. However, with that, the spotlight on him also increased, and rumors began to circulate within the Empire suggesting that Malgus bore responsibility for the death of Lord Venamal and the catastrophic defeat on Ord Radama. Still, the Sith Emperor wanted Ord Radama to be retaken, and Malgus was tasked to redeem himself and see it as an opportunity to erase the stain on his honor. Malgus, determined to succeed, personally led a regiment of Sith warriors in an assault on New Raido, the new capital of Ord Radama. His forces were then to follow once him and the Sith warriors had breached the city's outer defenses. The fighting dragged on for weeks, as Jedi resistance proved stronger than anticipated. Malgus faced several setbacks, but he took grim satisfaction in the brutality of the conflict, even as the campaign's slow progress began to erode his standing with the Dark Council. Despite these challenges, Malgus remained confident in his impending victory. Weeks later, his forces finally managed to take control of Ord Radama and secure it completely for the Sith. With Ord Radama taken, the Dark Council turned their focus towards a bigger target, an assault on the Republic capital, Coruscant. Due to his victory on Ord Radama, Malgus was chosen to be part of the assault on the capital. He was informed of the Dark Council's plans that he should start assembling forces to begin a wider offensive on the Republic core worlds, and was given a formidable fleet for the battles to come. For Malgus, this was what he had been striving toward. He was certain that he'd be instrumental in destroying the Republic. Chapter 7. Sacking of Coruscant. In 3653 BBY, 28 years after the start of the war, the Dark Council reached out to the Republic Senate with an offer to negotiate peace. As delegations from the Sith Empire, the Republic, and the Jedi Order prepared for a summit on Alderaan to formalize a treaty, the Sith finalized the last details of their surprise attack on Coruscant. Darth Angral was appointed to lead the overall operation. Darth Malgus, meanwhile, was entrusted with initiating the assault by striking the Jedi Temple. Malgus welcomed this role eagerly in the knowledge that the Empire would follow the attack with a full-scale bombardment that would obliterate Coruscant. To him, this was the realization of the vision he had received years earlier on Korriban. one where he saw himself as the destroyer of the Republic. For his part of the plan, Malgus was required to directly engage against the Jedi inside the temple to destroy the planet's main defense grid that was located in the temple itself. A strike team of 50 Sith warriors were picked to accompany him. Alongside the Sith warriors, Malgus once again recruited Shae Vizsla to help him, wanting her to infiltrate the temple and make sure that the defense grid would be destroyed before the arrival of their strike team. Although Malgus wanted to lead this preliminary strike without assistance, Darth Angral insisted that Lord Adras, Angral's political ally, serve as second-in-command and take charge of the infiltration team. Despite his dislike for Adras, Malgus had no choice but to accept the arrangement. In the months leading up to the attack, Malgus and his team prepared obsessively. He personally reviewed digital simulations of the battle thousands of times to refine every detail. When the peace negotiations commenced on Alderaan, the Sith's trap was sprung. Their opening had come. Malgus, accompanied by Alina, arrived on Coruscant. The two walked through Coruscant's bustling plazas unnoticed among the citizens. As they slowly made their way towards the Jedi Temple, Alina asked him about their future together and that she wasn't happy about the prospect of fighting and being in battles with him constantly. She wanted to find a place to settle down and live out their lives together. Malgus, though, rebut once again what she had heard countless times already, that his duties were toward the Sith Empire and that they couldn't be equal. He'd always be her master, and she was to stay his servant. She rebutted that Malgus didn't treat her like just any servant, though, as she knew that he loved her. Malgus coldly replied that she was a mere servant to him. Alina didn't let loose, though, and rebutted once again, claiming that underneath all this talk about evolution, perfection, and conflict, he didn't actually feel and believe these words. This made Malgus stop in his tracks and turn towards her. Without saying another word, he passionately kissed her, and then they both smiled at each other. They knew fully well that this might be their last moment together. Shortly afterwards, Malgus received confirmation from Shae Vizsla that the Republic's defensive grid had been taken offline by her, and that the way was clear for the Sith invasion. Alongside Alina, Malgus walked up the stairs toward the temple's main entrance. As a squad of Jedi Temple security guards tried to intercept them, Malgus quickly dispatched them. Inside the temple, 6 Jedi Knights dropped from the balconies to confront the intruders. Jedi Master Vin Zalo, the commander who was responsible for defeating Malgus's forces on different occasions, previously joined them. Together, the 7 Jedi stepped forward to meet Malgus and Alina. As Malgus kept walking toward the Jedi, the chrono on Malgus's wrist began to beep, signaling that a hijacked NR-2 Republic dropship was nearing the temple. The sound startled the Jedi, prompting them to ignite their lightsabers and brace themselves. Zalo, however, remained calm, holding his ground. Malgus, recognizing his composure, nodded in respect. Moments later, the dropship burst through the temple's entrance, skidding across the floor, ripping apart columns, collapsing balconies in its path. As debris settled, the ship's hatch blew open. Lord Adras emerged, followed by the 50 Sith warriors, all of whom ignited their lightsabers. Malgus smiled. This was the moment his vision had foretold. He activated his own weapon, and with Vizsla, Alina, and the others, charged into battle. Zalo and his Jedi leapt back nearly 20 meters, joining other Jedi defenders. Adras and the Sith warriors charged them, and a massive battle ensued. In the chaos, Malgus quickly killed several Republic soldiers and cut down several Jedi, each kill fueling his bloodlust. He then noticed a Zabrak female Jedi attempting to attack Alina. Knowing she didn't stand a chance, Malgus quickly intervened, extending his hand and pushed the Jedi into a stone column with the Force, killing her instantly. As the battle intensified, Adras leapt into a cluster of Republic troops and unleashed a powerful blast of Force energy, scattering the soldiers like leaves. Malgus followed with a devastating burst of Force lightning that engulfed 2 Padawans and a Jedi Knight, killing them and leaving their bodies charred. After these displays of power, Malgus and Adras exchanged a mocking salute. As the battle went on, the momentum seemed to shift in the Sith's favor. Malgus then saw Zalo in the midst of the battlefield, gleeful to get a chance of killing his foe. As he was engaged by 3 Jedis who tried to stop his advance, he dealt with all of them with ease. Fully consumed by the dark side, feeling it strengthening him, Malgus locked eyes with Zalo, the opponent he had truly been seeking. Zalo, in turn, demonstrated his own skill, cutting down 2 Sith warriors. Lord Adras then attempted to flank him, but Zalo quickly pushed him across the hall with a forced push. Malgus then charged. Both Zalo and Alina noticed the movement. Daru opened fire to cover Malgus's advance. Without glancing her way, Zalo deflected the shots with his lightsaber, redirecting 2 bolts right into Alina's chest before blasting her into a pillar with a force push. Malgus froze, staring at Alina's limp body on the floor. The sight ignited a fury unlike anything he had ever felt. Releasing his rage in an uncontrolled scream, he shattered a nearby column. Shards of stone cascaded across the battlefield as he redirected his hate towards Zalo. Another Jedi tried to intercept him, but Malgus casually reached out with the Force, crushed the defender's windpipe, and tossed the body aside as he charged. Zalo met him head-on, and a duel ensued between the 2 most powerful combatants on the battlefield. Zalo was incredibly fast, unleashing a wild flurry of saber strikes, unlike any opponent Malgus had encountered up until now. Malgus parried skillfully, but was put on the defensive quite quickly. Zalo soon landed a hard blow to Malgus's jaw with the hilt of his saber. Seizing the opening, Zalo lunged for Malgus's throat. But Malgus anticipated the move. He brought his saber vertical, blocked the strike, and spun free of the bind. Reversing his weapon during the spin, he plunged the blade into Zalo's abdomen. Zalo froze, impaled on Malgus's lightsaber, his eyes full of pain and disbelief. In them, Malgus saw the reflection of the burning Jedi Temple and the silhouette of Imperial ships descending upon Coruscant. The fall of Zalo was the symbol of the fall of the Republic in Malgus's eyes, and he couldn't have been more gleeful to have personally killed a foe as powerful as Zalo himself. Meanwhile, on the outsides of the Jedi Temple, the sacking of Coruscant had begun in full force. While Darth Angral and his forces took control of the Republic's Senate building and executed Supreme Chancellor Baruchan, the Sith Armada above the planet initiated a devastating orbital bombardment, destroying countless buildings on Coruscant, setting fire to the Republic capital. Back in the Jedi Temple, now lying in ruins, Malgus stood amid the wreckage, soaking in the moment. He commended the Sith warriors who had survived the battle, then turned his focus to Alina. She was mortally wounded, but still alive from Zalo's attack. Malgus then ordered Adras to summon a medical team from the Imperial medical transport Steadfast. Standing at the shattered entrance of the temple, Malgus watched the Empire's bombers rain destruction upon the surface of Coruscant. From there, he opened a communication channel to Darth Angral aboard the Darkness, briefing him on the temple's fall. When the medics arrived, Malgus ordered them to begin treating the wounded and giving priority towards Alina. Though she initially protested being taken away from his side, Malgus convinced her to go with the medical team to the Steadfast, promising to follow once his task on Coruscant was complete. Shortly afterward, Adras returned and questioned what would become of the bodies of the fallen Jedi. Malgus, who held a grudging respect for their bravery, decided that the temple would serve as their tomb. He used the explosives remaining in the hijacked dropship to demolish the ancient structure. He and the other Sith stood 20 meters away, silently observing the temple one final time. Then, Malgus triggered the detonator. The ancient symbol of the Jedi Order crumbled as the building imploded, sending stone and metal flying in every direction. The Sith warriors formed a barrier of Force energy to protect themselves as they cheered. The Jedi Temple was reduced to rubble, and the Sith had laid waste to the capital of the Republic. Chapter 8: Disillusionment. After the fall of the Empire, the battle on Coruscant was all but won. The Sith forces were doing their last efforts to take out the last defenders on the planet. While battle continued across the city world, most of the Sith forces that destroyed the Jedi Temple returned to their orbiting vessels. Malgus, however, remained at the Jedi Temple ruins, watching Coruscant's bombardment unfold from the surface. For hours, Sith bombers and their dreadnoughts rained fire down on the city. But then, suddenly, the bombardment stopped, and the Sith fighters took on a patrolling formation. Confused about this development, Malgus contacted Captain Jard aboard the Darkness, demanding to know why the bombardment had stopped. Jard informed him that Lord Angral had changed plans, ordering all Sith forces to transition into occupying the planet instead. Angral declared marital law across the planet and sealed off the planet entirely. The Sith battlecruisers were stationed to form a complete blockade around the planet, with no ships allowed to depart or land on the planet. Meanwhile, deep within the lower levels of Galactic City, patrols of Imperial war droids were deployed to scour the Undercity, searching for civilians who had taken refuge there during the chaos of the invasion. Inside the government district, Darth Angral transformed the office of the now deceased Supreme Chancellor into his personal command center. From this new command hub, Angral formally disbanded the Galactic Senate and executed a significant number of the Senate's surviving members. Having secured most of the planet, search and rescue units scoured the city to recover any wounded civilians and troops. He also issued orders to seize control of a prominent Republic hospital to serve as a triage center for injured Sith warriors and Imperial troops. Enraged at the events unfolding before him, Malgus left the ruins of the temple and made his way to the Senate building to confront Angral. On his way there, he learned that Coruscant was being used as a political bargaining chip for the peace negotiations on Alderaan rather than being destroyed outright. This was a betrayal of everything Malgus believed the Empire stood for, and a rejection of the vision he had devoted himself to. He wanted to see the symbol of the Republic be completely destroyed. That was the way of the Sith, to destroy their enemies with their overwhelming power. Upon arriving at the Senate building, Malgus was escorted to the office of Angral. In the office, he found that Lord Adras had already beaten him to Angral's side and had reported on the Jedi Temple's destruction in his place. But he didn't take his time to think too much about it. In a fit of rage, he questioned Lord Angral's orders. Angral rebutted furiously that these were the orders of the Emperor, and that Malgus should know his place in the hierarchy. Then, smiling slyly, he calmly mentioned that he had rerouted Elena's medical transport. Instead of her being transferred to the Steadfast, she was brought to the hospital on Coruscant that they've taken control of. Having said that, Angral watched Malgus' reaction, who didn't take the news well. Furious, Malgus ignited his lightsaber and took a swing, only for Lord Adras to intercept his lightsaber with his own. The duel was short-lived, as Angral quickly stepped in to halt the fight. He dismissed Malgus and retained Adras by his side. After the meeting, Malgus made his way to the hospital. Outside of the hospital's entrance, a large crowd of injured and grieving Coruscanti civilians recognized Malgus as a Sith Lord and began taunting and berating him, blaming him for the suffering around them. Malgus tried to ignore them until someone in the crowd hurled a chunk of Duracrete at him. In response, Malgus unleashed a force push that slammed into the crowd, killing several civilians and sending the rest flying. With the entrance cleared, he entered the hospital and found Daru. Without hesitation, he pulled her from Republic care and prepared her for immediate evacuation to give her the proper care she needed. On the way to the Steadfast, he replayed the events that had just happened before him. He knew that it wasn't wise political move what he had just done, but was more furious that Angral and Adras seemed willing to use Elena as leverage to control and discredit him. They were politicians in his eyes, nothing more, trying to use sleazy ways to get to the top and in favor of the Emperor. They had no values for the Sith way. Diving deeper into his emotions, he also started to question whether or not love actually had any place in his place as a Sith, and if his loyalties were laid correctly considering the path the Emperor was setting them on. Following these events, Darth Angral reassigned Malgus to a new role, making him commander of the orbital blockade surrounding Coruscant. Malgus was placed in charge of securing and controlling all hyperspace lanes in and out of the system, ensuring that no ship could approach or escape the planet without Imperial authorization. It was basically a demotion for Malgus, while Lord Adras took his place in managing the situation on the ground. Chapter 9. No Weakness. While Darth Malgus commanded the Imperial fleet in orbit over Coruscant, he directed the management of arriving supply convoys, massive super freighters escorted by frigates. On the first full day after the planet's capture, the blockade received a priority alert. A Dragonfly-class dropship had entered the system without Imperial registration. Following standard security protocols, the vessel was immediately surrounded by a formation of Mk-7 advanced interceptors and magnetically pulled aboard the Valor, Malgus' flagship. The pilot of the unidentified dropship, Varad Zizor, was a former Imperial sniper who had since become a bounty hunter. Once in custody, Zizor complied with questioning and was eventually granted an audience with Darth Malgus. In exchange for lenient terms, he shared that he knew of a spice smuggler named Zirid Kor being en route to Coruscant. More importantly, Zizor revealed that Kor was carrying a passenger. Aaron Lanier, a rogue Jedi Knight and former Padawan of the Jedi Vin Zalo. She had left the Peace Summit on Alderaan without authorization and was acting on her own to get vengeance for her master's death. Sizor's information proved to be correct. Kor and Lanier had secretly entered Coruscant's airspace aboard an XS stock light freighter called the Fat Man, which had latched itself onto the hull of one of the incoming super freighters, using the convoy's hyperspace jump to mask their approach. They managed to evade detection initially, but their presence was eventually discovered by Imperial shuttles conducting anomaly scans on the convoy. Realizing stealth was no longer an option, Kor maneuvered the Fat Man behind one of the Sith freighters, preventing the Valor's weapon systems from targeting them. Malgus quickly ordered the freighter to move out of the way, and then to target the Fat Man with a tractor beam. He was curious about the Jedi passenger it carried, and wanted to question her. As the Fat Man made a desperate plunge toward Coruscant's atmosphere, the Valor's tractor beam locked onto the vessel. But Kor was able to break free from its pull. The Valor responded by opening fire, destroying the Fat Man shortly after it breached the upper atmosphere. But Kor and Lanier had already abandoned the doomed vessel. They leapt from the cockpit just before it exploded and survived the fall as Lanier used the Force to slow their descent. Once grounded, they began planning their next steps. Meanwhile, wanting to conduct research on the Jedi first before going after her, Malgus tasked Alina, who had healed back to health, to collect high-value targets from Coruscant from a list of both individuals and technologies. The personnel were to be taken as prisoners of war, and the technology would be claimed as Imperial spoils. Kor and Lanier on the ground sought answers. They made their way to the remains of the Jedi Temple, entering via the lower levels. There, Lanier accessed the security holo-recordings from the Temple's surveillance systems and learned the truth that Malgus had been the one to kill her master, and also saw that a Twi'lek had been present during the attack. She also deducted that the Twi'lek had some sort of meaning for the Sith Lord, as he seemed to constantly protect her on all the holo-recordings. Knowing the truth now, Lanier planned to infiltrate the Valor and confront Malgus directly. While she remained in hiding in a bombed-out apartment, Kor conducted recon at the Liston spaceport, looking for a transport. He was shocked to discover that Alina, the Twi'lek seen in the Jedi Temple footage, was present at the docks as she managed to transport of the prisoners. Kor rushed back to inform Lanier, only to find that she had already left. She had returned to the temple ruins, seeking clarity in the wake of her master's death. But Malgus had anticipated her movements. After researching her background, he deduced that she would return to the site and had already gone to the temple to wait for her arrival. As Lanier saw Malgus standing there, rage overcame her. Igniting her lightsaber, she lashed out at the Sith Lord, and the two faced against each other in the ruins of the temple. As the duel went on, Malgus started to gain the upper hand while Lanier grew more and more tired. Desperate for a way out, Lanier escaped on a speeder piloted by Kor, who had come to rescue her. As she didn't get her desired outcome, Lanier vowed that she would strike at Malgus's heart before killing him, by taking Alina's life. Together, Lanier and Kor broke into the Liston spaceport and tracked Alina down. Though fully intent on revenge, the Jedi ultimately stayed true to her teachings. She realized that Alina had been mistreated by Malgus and was treated harshly by him. She thus knocked Alina unconscious instead of killing her, then dragged her to the hangar floor while Kor left the planet on an Imperial ship to escape to safety. As Kor escaped, Malgus arrived at the hangar and discovered Lanier standing over Alina. Realizing the danger she was in, Malgus ignited his lightsaber yet again, and a second duel erupted between the Sith Lord and the Jedi Knight. During the fight, Lanier used Alina as a leverage repeatedly, threatening her life to secure Kor's safe departure. Malgus, prioritizing Alina's safety in that moment, ordered his forces not to pursue the escaping ship and allowing Kor to escape. As the duel went on, Malgus got the upper hand on Lanier and managed to strike her with a blast of Force lightning. This knocked the Jedi out and ended their duel. As Malgus stood over the unconscious Jedi, several different feelings hit him. Just like Angrel and Adras, she had used Alina against him, but at the same time, he was grateful that she didn't end up killing her. With that thought in mind, he decided to show mercy toward the Jedi, letting her live and allowing her to escape the planet. As Lanier left, he contemplated about his actions yet again. His emotions had dictated his every movement in this instant, his every decision. he couldn't quite understand why he'd show mercy to the Jedi for sparing Alina. Furthermore, Alina was becoming a weakness that his enemies were starting to expose. And the thing about being a Sith is they can't have any weaknesses. In a final, fateful decision, he waited for Alina to wake up, drew his lightsaber, and stabbed her through the heart, removing this weakness of himself. Chapter 10, Cold War. Back on Alderaan, the political negotiations reached their conclusion. After days of tense discussion, Sith diplomat Lord Barras presented the Republic with the Treaty of Coruscant, a one-sided agreement heavily favoring the Empire. Though some representatives hesitated, Senator Amris and Jedi Master Darnala ultimately agreed to the treaty's terms. With the signing of the treaty, the Great Galactic War officially ended. The Sith Empire began to withdraw from Coruscant. The last remnants of Imperial occupation were some Sith war droids left behind in the planet's underlevels. However, the once thriving Ecumenopolis was completely devastated, a wounded shadow of its former self. After the formal end of the war with the signing of the Treaty of Coruscant, Darth Malgus deliberately withdrew from the political infighting that consumed the Sith hierarchy. While many of his peers schemed for power and influence within the Dark Council, Malgus knew that this path wasn't one he was willing to walk on. Instead, he decided to lead Sith military expeditions into the unknown regions, expanding the reach of the Empire into territories long uncharted. In the greater galaxy, the tension between the Republic and the Sith were far from over, despite the Treaty of Coruscant. While the Sith kept enforcing their rule on the newly acquired territories of the Republic was seeking to rebuild its military and also the trust of its member worlds. During this time period, which is known as the Cold War, Malgus commissioned a superweapon called the Emperor's Shadow, a third-generation cloaking device. When the Jedi Revan sought out the Foundry and used it to create a droid army, Malgus was the one to discover Revan's plans and assembled a strike team to take out Revan to make sure that the army he was building didn't actually turn into a real threat against the Empire. It also made him aware of the Foundry's existence, a technology similar to the Starforge that used the dark side of the Force to produce battle droids. In the meantime, the Great Galactic War had restarted again. The uneasy peace between the Sith Empire and the Republic gave way to yet another wave of battles across the galaxy. During the second coming of the Great Galactic War, it was revealed to the Dark Council that Emperor Vitiate actually sought to drain all life in the galaxy by conducting a ritual that would grant him godlike powers. Frightened of the possibility of that happening, the Dark Council decided to act against Vitiate and work alongside the Republic to stop him. During the Battle of Dromund Kaas, Emperor Vitiate was defeated by the hero of Tython. Having stopped the Emperor, the uneasy alliance between the two factions broke yet again, and battles continued across the galaxy. Malgus himself during that time wasn't involved in many major battles, except for battles like the one to destroy Hammer Station. But now, with the Emperor dead, the Sith leadership in disarray, a new opportunity presented itself before him. His ambitions had always surpassed those of a mere soldier, and soon his plans would come to fruition. Chapter 11, A New Empire. In the wake of the Sith Emperor's presumed death on Dromund Kaas, Darth Arho, a member of the Dark Council, launched a retaliatory invasion of Ilum. Malgus, seeing an opportunity to eliminate a rival, covertly assisted the Republic in defeating Arho. With Arho killed, Malgus was able to claim his seat on the Dark Council and take control of the Sphere of Military Offense, the division that Arho led. As head of this division, Malgus acted as a strategic advisor for the Empire's ongoing efforts. Specifically, he observed the Imperial campaign to harvest Adagan crystals from Ilum, a crystal that could make their starships invisible. Darth Arho, during his campaign, had managed to mine several of these crystals, and they were all at the disposal of Malgus now. Even before he joined the Dark Council, Malgus had been a vocal proponent of reform. He had always been unique in his thinking, as he embraced different species and saw the strength in diversity. He envisioned an empire strengthened not by human superiority and Sith elitism, but by embracing alien alliances and a more inclusive philosophy. These ideas were, of course, rejected by traditionalist figures in the Dark Council and the Imperial military. Nonetheless, Malgus quietly used his new authority and resources on the Council to secretly build his own stealth armada with the Adagan crystals. This should lay the foundation of his grander ambition. He vowed to serve the dark side and nothing else, and saw the Sith as a weak impersonation of the true embodiment of the dark side. An order that sought peace with their enemy instead of destroying them was a pitiful sight in his eyes and needed to be eradicated. Once the fleet was complete, Malgus made his move. He delivered a powerful declaration to the Empire, denouncing the Dark Council and proclaiming the birth of a new regime, a new empire free from Sith political corruption and infighting, instead being driven by tolerance and cooperation with alien species. With that, he announced himself as the emperor of this new empire. He also revealed that he had used the Foundry's ancient technology to build a droid army that surpassed even the one created by Revan. In his announcement, Malgus framed his revolution as a cleansing fire, a new order that would purify the galaxy by warfare until its mission was complete. He invited all Imperial citizens, soldiers, and Sith warriors who shared his dissatisfaction with the current Sith Empire to join him. Many followed his call. Malgus quickly assembled a formidable force consisting of droids, Sith of many species, disillusioned soldiers, and mercenaries. Rather than launching a full-scale war immediately, he tested his rebellion's strength through skirmishes on singular worlds, waiting for the perfect moment to strike both the Republic and the Empire. As his new empire began winning battles and seizing territory in the unknown regions, more and more Sith rallied to his side as they deemed the Sith Empire to be falling apart following the Emperor's death. Among these defectors was Darth Saravan, who became one of Malgus's closest allies. With support growing and his army expanding, Malgus's rebellion gained momentum. Malgus also forged an alliance with a powerful alien group known as the Schism Collective, a group of scientists and technologists whom he gave several gifts and provided protection for. In return, they supplied his forces with powerful enhancements by integrating Rakata technology into the weapons used by Malgus's troops, and helped modify one of Vitiate's space stations that Malgus used as his headquarters with the Foundry systems. These upgrades made the stealth fleet nearly undetectable and even more dangerous. With these measures set up, Malgus then deployed Darth Saravan to Ilum to continue the campaign that Darth Aro had begun. However, the Republic eventually countered Saravan's assault and defeated him. From one of the captured stealth command ships given to Saravan, the Republic were able to track the fleet's origins, eventually discovering the coordinates of Malgus's hidden space station above Ilum. Wanting to eliminate the threat that Malgus's fleet posed to them, the Republic assembled a strike team of Jedi and Sith forces that would confront and defeat Malgus once and for all. Chapter 12, Fallen. Malgus wasn't prepared for this. The enemy forces managed to find his station and a strike team was closing in on his throne room. Malgus braced himself for the final confrontation. The Republic fleet was too strong for his forces. Thus, he decided to activate the station's self-destruct in order to try and destroy the Republic fleet that had surrounded his station. Right after activating the self-destruct, he turned to confront the strike team in front of him. With his lightsaber raging for battle, he jumped down, quaking the floor of the space station as he slowly made his way toward the strike team. Die or defeat me. With these words, Malgus took them all on, putting up a formidable fight. He was a battle-hardened warrior and one of the strongest Sith Lords in his generations. He was not to go down easily. Despite his best efforts, though, the strike team eventually managed to push him back and his resolve started to weaken. Ultimately, they forced Malgus over the edge of a platform and into the station's central reactor shaft. Malgus fell. With that, Darth Malgus was thought to be dead, and the threat of his new empire crumbled along with him. Malgus's coup had failed. Chapter 13, Chains to Break. After the defeat of Malgus, Emperor Vitiate had returned in the form of Emperor Valkorion alongside the Infinite Empire. The Infinite Empire quickly swept through the forces of both the Republic and Sith, subjugating a lot of their territory. But eventually, the Infinite Empire and the Immortal Emperor were defeated once and for all by a Jedi called the Outlander, one of the most powerful beings to ever grace the galaxy. Under the Outlander, the Republic and Sith Empire had merged into the Galactic Alliance, which at the time fought against the forces of Zakuul. However, with the common enemy removed, the Sith Empire soon sought to build their strength themselves again. The Empress of the new Sith Empire, Darth Asina, had a secret that was to be unleashed on the galaxy. Unbeknownst to most in the galaxy, Malgus had actually survived the battle at Ilum and even survived the explosion of the space station. He was found by Darth Malgus, the latest successor of the remnants of the Sith Empire and the current Empress. She found him in the debris of the destroyed station and rebuilt him with enhanced cybernetics. Then, he was frozen in carbonite to preserve his life, waiting for the time that they'd require his services again. The Sith Empire also equipped him with memory-altering and subjugating enhancements that were meant to bind Malgus to their will. Years after his supposed death, Darth Malgus unleashed Malgus on Ossus as she used him as her personal attack dog to kill a Jedi colony on it, and to wage war on the Galactic Alliance. Malgus, bound to her will through the years of mind alterations, did as asked, going to Ossus and killing the Keldor Jedi Master Nost Doral. However, despite having him bound to their will, Malgus slowly started to question the orders that he was given, starting to rebel against the conditioning of his cybernetics. His spirit was not to be bound to a life of enslavement toward the bidding of someone else. After completing a mission on Alderaan and Mek Shah for the Empire, he managed to use his lightsaber to burn away the chip that was relaying his actions to the Empire. Then, with the help of a medical droid, he attempted to erase the programming on his mind that he was put under. He succeeded in removing all the cybernetics that fed his mind with the conditioning, but fixing his mind that was put under years of it wasn't an easy fix. Despite the droid's best efforts, Malgus could still feel his mind being attacked by the Sith Empire's new Emperor, Vowren, who attempted to gain control back over him. Dreams and visions constantly haunted him, where the Emperor tried to subjugate him and put a leash back on him. Seeking to find a way to permanently erase her effect on his mind, he remembered a Sith Lord whose mind had been erased before. That Sith was Revan. With that in mind, he set course for Dantooine, seeking the knowledge of the Force ability that allowed the Jedi to erase Revan's mind during the Jedi Civil War. He succeeded in finding a relic of Darth Nul in the ruins of Dantooine, which had records of the wisdom he sought. With that, he managed to break free of the mind control that Darth Malgus had put him under. Now his will was finally free once again, and he was acting completely on his own accord. He had broken free of the chains that bound him, and declared that he'll never have a master again. He'll never let someone else rule over him, and never return to the Empire. With that, he started to seek out ways that he could continue his previous quest of rebuilding his empire. Unbeknownst to him, the commander of the Galactic Alliance had taken up the trail of Malgus and was following him. Chapter 14: A New Hope. During his search for an edge over the Empire, he came across a temple on Ilum where he had tracked a unique holocron that was hidden deep within the ancient Temple of Null. This holocron contained a list of Force-sensitive individuals which he could subjugate to his will and use them to fight for him. However, upon his arrival, he discovered that both Sith and Jedi forces had already arrived just before him. Inside the temple, 2 Jedi and a Sith warrior were already engaged in a battle for possession of the artifact. The holocron was housed inside a mysterious machine at the heart of the temple chamber. As the duel raged, the Jedi began to gain the upper hand, wounding the Sith combatant and cutting off his hand. Malgus came up behind the Sith warrior and drove his lightsaber through the Sith's back. Shocked, the dying Sith cursed Malgus as a traitor before collapsing. With the immediate threat neutralized, Malgus turned to face the Jedi Master Denalm Or and his Padawan Sahar Katin. As Sahar moved toward the holocron to destroy both it and the strange machine that contained it, Malgus unleashed a savage wave of Force lightning to stop her. She narrowly dodged the attack and reached the device. Malgus then turned to confront Master Or. The 2 warriors clashed, Malgus' aggressive and overwhelming style pushing Or to the brink. Still, the Jedi Master held his own. While Malgus and Or fought, Sahar accidentally activated the machine, which triggered a version of her past and enveloped her in a force field. Due to the vision, she then refused her master's demand to destroy the machine as she got influenced by its power. Malgus sensed her unrest and tried to press her on it, calling out that both the Jedi and Sith preserved their power by controlling who had access to the Force while casting the rest aside. It was a way to play God, according to Malgus. His words struck a nerve with the young Padawan, but Master Or acted quickly by destroying the machine with the Force and in the same motion hurling a massive part of the temple against Malgus. Malgus was trapped and had to watch as the Padawan retrieved the holocron yet again. As Sahar and Ord argued over the machine's destruction and what she had seen in the visions, Malgus intervened once more. He revealed the true function of the machine. It had been designed to detect children with Force potential who were dismissed or overlooked by the Jedi Order. Ord, now exposed, tried to reclaim the holocron, but his Padawan resisted. A struggle broke out between them. Malgus, capitalizing on the chaos, used the Force to animate a web of loose cables from the broken machine and ensnared Ord. Then he broke free of the rubble, summoned his lightsaber, and dragged the helpless Jedi Master toward him. In full view of Sahar, he executed Ord in front of her. Enraged and heartbroken, Sahar drew her master's fallen weapon and engaged Malgus in a duel. Despite being wounded, Malgus held his own in the collapsing chamber and eventually dispatched Sahar and took the holocron for himself. As Sahar used the Force to shield herself from the falling debris, Malgus seized the moment. He snatched the holocron from her grasp. Before leaving her behind, he spoke directly to her, declaring that if she was ready to break free of her cage, she would find her own destiny. Then he vanished into the depths of the temple. Chapter 15. Captured. Upon exiting the temple, Malgus was confronted by the Alliance commander and a strike force with the Republic fleet right behind them. They quickly defeated Malgus and took him into custody. He was taken to a high-security facility that was specifically designed to contain a being of his immense power and abilities. Inside his cell, Malgus remained mostly silent and meditated most of the time. Sometime after his capture, Darth Malgus was visited by the Alliance commander in his stasis prison on Carrick Station. The commander questioned Malgus about his apparent interest in a child of the Emperor. Malgus, however, remained uncooperative. Rather than offer an explanation, he dismissed the question with contempt, calling the commander a fool. He then declared that everything the commander and others believed about Darth Nul was false. Without prompting, Malgus began recounting the true history of the elusive Sith Lord. When the commander asked why he would choose to reveal such sensitive information, Malgus responded that it was irrelevant to him whether he shared it now or not. He insisted that Nul's secrets were never going to stay hidden. Moreover, he revealed that his plans were already set in motion and that nothing the commander or anyone else did would be able to halt them. He was certain that his vision would come through. A vision where his empire reigned and the Jedi and Sith Empire were both destroyed. A galaxy engulfed in flames. As he spoke, Malgus began to test the strength of the stasis field restraining him, straining against it with the Force. But the field held. The commander, recognizing the danger he still posed, warned Malgus that whatever had begun would be stopped. Without waiting for a reply, the commander turned and exited the chamber. Chapter 16. Unleashed. Sometime later, a Mandalorian civil war broke out. Shae Vizsla, the former ally of Malgus, had become Mandalore the Avenger, the leader of the Mandalorians. A rebellion had started to form under Hita Kal, who disagreed with the path that Shae had set the Mandalorians on, claiming them to be mere mercenaries now rather than warriors. The Alliance commander and the Republic tried to negotiate peace between them and discovered a link between Hita Kal and Darth Malgus. Furious, Shae was brought in front of Malgus to question him about his connections to Hita Kal. Malgus dismissed any such notion, making it clear that his goals transcended Hita Kal's rebellion, which he described as trivial and directionless. According to Malgus, the Mandalorians themselves were broken, a fractured people trapped in their own indecision and identity crisis. He viewed them as no longer relevant. Then, without warning, Malgus surged with power and briefly disrupted the containment field holding him. His voice thundered as he declared that he would tear down the galaxy's corrupt systems, those that bred weakness and stagnation. He vowed to burn their legacies to ash in order to see who would emerge from the fire. Malgus then sensed the presence of Shae Vizsla just beyond the prison's door. With venom in his tone, he began taunting her, deriding her for the failure to eliminate Hita Kal on Runuk and mocking the fractured state of her Mandalorian forces. In contrast, he pointed out, Hita was going stronger. Malgus ended his tirade by predicting that Hita Kal would eventually defeat and kill Shae. Shae, furious, demanded that Malgus tell her where Hita Kal was hiding. He met her demand with silence. Once she left, Malgus turned his attention back to the Outlander. Looking directly at his longtime adversary, Malgus admitted that out of everyone, only the Outlander had ever truly come close to understanding him. It was a tragedy, he said, that the only one who might have helped him, his equal in power and clarity, would remain his enemy. Then, as the Outlander walked away, Malgus sat in silence. Not long afterward, everything changed. After the Outlander recovered the holocron of Darth Nul, Shae Vizsla returned to Carrick Station with a squad of mercenaries and launched an assault on the station's security. One by one, the droids guarding Malgus' prison were dismantled and destroyed. Finally, they reached the stasis chamber itself. Shae took to the air using her jetpack and ascended to Malgus' platform and obliterated the control unit above his chair, shattering the mechanism that kept him bound. The platform destabilized, collapsing into open space below the prison. A waiting shuttle swooped in beneath it, catching Shae and the newly freed Darth Malgus. The two vanished into the void, on to a mission that is not yet concluded. Epilogue. The story of Malgus ends here and remains open until this point. It isn't clear yet what his plans with Shae Vizsla will be and how his visions are to come true. Despite the outcome of his story being uncertain, Malgus left a legacy on the Sith. Thousands of years after his death, the Dark Lord of the Sith, Darth Bane, referenced Malgus in his book, The Rule of Two. But it was Darth Sidious who took a special interest in Malgus' legacy. Through an antiquities dealer, Sidious acquired surviving excerpts from Malgus' personal journals, written during the height of the Great Galactic War. Sidious was so impressed by the raw military genius and dark side mastery reflected in those writings that he preserved them within the Book of Sith, an anthology of Sith doctrine and historical records. He noted how Malgus had been one of the Sith Emperor's most effective and relentless soldiers. Years later, Sidious's own apprentice, Darth Vader, studied Malgus' words and recognized in them a disturbing similarity to his own path, one marked by pain, betrayal, and transformation. Malgus, like Vitiate, came to be seen as one of the most formidable Sith in galactic history, his strength and influence echoing through the ages.